Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Casey Martin from Wine Country Pens, and this is going to be a video on my TCP Global pressure pot specifically. I'm going to be walking you guys through how I set up this pressure pot and telling you guys why I would highly recommend this as a step up from the Harbor Freight pressure pots if you don't want to spend a ton of money on a really high-end pressure pot like CA Technologies that I know, for example, Zach Higgins is a huge supporter of, and I totally trust his perspective. And if you want like the best of the best pressure pot, you should look at that. But this is kind of a mid-tier, more affordable option, and I'll touch on how I modified this so that if you buy a pressure pot like this yourself, you'll have everything you need to know. So I'll get to that right now. Really quick guys, before I get into the changes that need to be made to this pressure pot for resin casting, I wanted to touch on the reasons why this is a good step up from the Harbor Freight pressure pot and why I would highly recommend this as kind of a more affordable option. So this pressure pot is a lot more secure in terms of the way it clamps down. It's got these big wing nuts that you guys will see a lot more close up in a second when I talk about the modifications. So that makes it a lot easier to clamp down, combined with the fact that it comes with the ability to have casters on the bottom for rolling it around, but that gives bolt holes so that you can bolt it down, and then that makes it really easy to crank down on these wing nuts when it's locked in place as well. It's much more sturdy than the Harbor Freight pots. The actual metal itself is much thicker. And the most important part, which I love and is why I really recommend this pressure pot, is its max PSI is 90. Even the really nice CA Technologies pressure pot, I believe their max is 70. It might be 80, but I know it's less than this. So I take this PSI up to 80 consistently every time. I've done it over 100 times without fail. And I'll go over the modifications I made. Now I just wanted to touch on those things really quickly. Alright everyone, so now getting a close-up on the pressure pot, I'll walk through each and everything that I modified in order to make this work. This original regulator that comes on it is perfectly fine. You actually don't need to take off the pressure valve like you do on many Harbor Freights, because this actually worked great. And if you do want to use the regulator, I've tested it before and it works fine, so I would assume other pots that are made by them are going to be just as fine as well. I doubt I just got a lucky one. The thing that I changed is this ball valve right now. I'll twist it so that the ring doesn't kind of block it off. Geez, there we go. This ball valve actually shot up into, I forget exactly what it was, but it had two ball valves so that this could be used obviously as a paint tank. And so I just took that off and just kept one of the ball valves for this, and then put on a male end for my hose to attach to easily. So that's really all you have to do for the regulator. It's pretty simple, and since it comes with a ball valve, you don't even have to go buy one. You do, of course, need to buy or at least have a male fitting for your hose, but that's about it on that. The biggest thing that you have to change, and I will touch on this in a second, is this guy in the middle. This pot comes with a manual mixing agitator, so it actually has a big rod that goes all the way through with fins on the bottom that are at the bottom that you use to mix the paint. Obviously we're not doing that in this case, so I'll explain the procedure for that really quickly after I touch on the other things. The safety valve I kept, I'll try to lift it up a little more. The safety valve I kept, it was so stuck in there, so I wanted to take it out and put on some good threading sealant myself, but it was so tight in there I couldn't even get it out that I figured the factory seal was clearly working, and it has been. And if anybody has a problem with their safety valve popping off before 80 psi and they want to bring it up to that, you just twist it to the left and twist to loosen it, therefore making the pressure higher. And if you want to tighten it, if it's too loose, then you turn it to the right. It's just like righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, but for the valve. And this guy right here was a little awkward what I did is I wanted to take out the whole thing as well, but then again, the factory sealant was just too hard to deal with. So it had a weird 1/4 inch threading coming out of here, so I just put the plug with threading sealant in there. And then this guy, I forget exactly what it was in here, but it was a 1/4 inch threading as well that I put a plug in with thread sealant. So now I'll touch on the biggest portion, which is this guy, which is the most complicated. But quickly wanted to mention that this pressure pot doesn't leak barely at all. If I leave it running or leave it full for 24 hours and I fill it up to 80 psi, when I come back like the following day or the following morning, it'll be down to 60 psi, which to me, that minimal leak over 24 hours is fine, considering my Harbor Freights I only bring up to 50 psi. So even after this is leaked for 24 hours, which is way longer than you'd ever need to keep a mold in the pressure pot for anyway, is higher than if I used the Harbor Freight and it never leaked. So enough of that, moving on to the big modification you have to make. So when you take out this manual agitator, you're left with a big gaping hole. And the way to fix this is to get a 5/8 inch bolt. And you want to get 2 rubber washers, one for the top and one for the bottom, which I'll show in a second. And I didn't get any metal washers after that, but if I had to redo this, I would get 2 rubber and 2 metal so that you could have the metal on top of the rubber or on bottom of the rubber on the bottom, pushing the rubber gasket even more, creating a better seal. Because it might be hard for you guys to see right now, but since I have the bolt pushing down the rubber seal, it works fine, but it doesn't disperse the pressure evenly like a metal washer would. So showing the bottom, what I have here, it's kind of messy from a spill when I forgot that I didn't put a lid on one of my molds, if you're wondering what the splatter is from. But here is the bottom. On the bottom here, I did use a metal washer because I had one lying around, and that helps a lot. But what I did is, of course, I used threading sealant on this because you even want to make sure pressure isn't getting through the sealant. And you want to remember that since this is the bottom, when it's pressurized, things are going to be pushing up towards it. So having that rubber gasket and then the metal washer pushing against it is good. Also combined with the fact that the pressure itself will be pushing against that and helping with the seal. So the other thing you'll have to deal with is this thing right here, which is a metal tube that comes down that is used if this pot is being used for painting. And I tried so hard with pipe wrenches and stuff like that to wrench it out that I ended up just using a hacksaw and cutting it off, which you can very easily do if you're just going to be using this for resin casting like I am. If you can screw it out, then that's obviously the best. You'll get more clearance. But you got to make sure that if you do cut it, you have to cut it at least shorter than what your bolt comes down to, or the lowest part of the pot, because of course you don't want this to be hitting a mold rack or anything you put in there. So that's it pretty much for the modification side of it. Of course you want to plug everything. This guy is the thing that gave me the most headache. What I would also recommend, if you have large enough pliers, I actually had to go buy some pliers to do this, is to take off this bolt. It's not necessary because I'm sure the factory seal is fine, but I did take off this big hollow bolt because it has a hole in the middle, and added my own threading sealant to that as well, just so that I could make sure that this thing was going to be as good as I could make it. And that's pretty much all you have to do. Overall, it probably cost me like 10-15 bucks, if that, with getting the parts to modify, because you already get some ball valve with this, and you don't have to do much with this. And if you keep your safety valve and this guy, you honestly actually don't even need to use much plugs, just 2. So I'll talk a little bit more about the pressure pot's benefits, and that's about it for the modifications. So I really quickly wanted to show you guys the wing nuts I was talking about, in case you guys didn't get a good view earlier. What's so great about these is that the way they work is different than the Harbor Freight or other style pressure pots like the Harbor Freight, where they just push down onto the lid. This uses, as you guys can see, a washer mechanism with kind of a, I don't know what you would call it other than a holder, I guess, for the washers, so that it clamps down onto this, which is obviously welded on and secured. And you guys probably can't see because of the wing nut, but it's secured to the pressure pot lid. And this is a way that allows it to be used way more frequently without any type of damage done to the pressure pot than the Harbor Freight design. You know, you're never gonna see any type of damage to the lid like with a Harbor Freight, and they're so big. Like, it's hard. I hope I can show you guys a little bit with my hand as a size comparison, but you can just get a whole hand on this, whereas the pressure pot hinges for the Harbor Freight are like this size, just like half of the wing nut. So that was it on the wing nuts. I just wanted to show you guys those really quickly. Alright everyone, so I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I might have left some things out. If I did, definitely leave a comment down below in the comment section so I can answer it down there in case anybody else has the same question. I didn't want to make this video too long, and there's really not too much info to cover, but I get questions a lot about this pressure pot, and I really think it's a gem that a lot of people don't know about who are trying to get pressure pots for resin casting. And so I wanted to cover the answers to the questions that I get all the time, and hopefully help people who might have been looking for a pressure pot for resin casting, didn't want to deal with some of the problems that the Harbor Freight ones will have over time. And this is the answer, in my humble opinion. Don't get me wrong, the Harbor Freights are great pressure pots. I still use mine all the time. I've had one of them for about 2.5 years now, and it's still going great. Use that hundreds of times as well. But this is a step up, and if I were to get another pressure pot, I would definitely get another one of these. So I'll leave the Amazon link down below in the description. It might be sold out on Amazon, but I'm sure you can get it from their website. And it's definitely a better deal than the CA Technologies, in my opinion, if you are looking for a more affordable route. So please like the video if you guys liked it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and like I said, comment if you guys have any questions, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.